What's up, guys? Another big pay-per-view card. This one's gonna be ending 2023, and they're not pulling anything back on this card. It's not finalized yet, it's not full, but we do have 7 confirmed fights, which means that's pretty close to being full. I'm pretty sure these are the only big fights that are going to be on the card. It looks like the main card should be done, and they're just like kind of figuring out the prelims. So UFC 296 is going to be happening on December 16 at the T-Mobile Arena in Vegas, and it's going to be headlined by Leon Edwards versus Colby Covington. There were some doubters. Some people were saying that Colby didn't deserve the title shot, and here we are. For me, it was kind of a no-brainer. Of course, they're going to go this route. Colby's one of the bigger stars of the welterweight division. He's coming off a win over another big star, so Colby does bring a lot of eyes with him. And they got to end the year with a big championship fight, and that's what this is. Did he beat all the contenders and stuff like that? No, he didn't. But that's how this game goes sometimes. The bigger stars are going to get some special treatment. Just like you can if you go and play Raid Shadow Legends, an amazing mobile RPG game with a collection of over 700 unique champions, displaying great graphics, strategic and very fun gameplay of both PvE and PvP content. And right now you can go up against one of the toughest bosses in the game, the Hydra, fighting off its multiple different heads, each counting as its own individual boss battle. Like when you fight the head of Blight, it uses poison on your team while also protecting its own. It has an ability called Poison Cloud, which makes it hard for your team to land their attacks, meaning that your big attacks are either going to be weaker or some of them can even miss, but he is weak to fire, so you want to take this guy out quickly with that. And there's also the Head of Torment, spreading fear on your team to make them skip turns, losing on opportunities to land your own skills. And there's also so many different kind of content, but for new players, you can get the Stag Knight, which is one of the best epic champions in the game. And with the Stag Knight, you can get a skin for your new champion designed by Jontron by using the promo code JTSKIN before October 7th. It's literally that easy. All you have to do is plug in that promo code and you'll get the epic champion Stag Knight. This is only for new players, but if you're not a new player, don't worry. You could still get Stag Knight and the skin through in-game content. And not only Stag Knight, you can also get a free legendary champion, the Monkey King Sun Wukong. All you have to do is log in on 7 different days between now and October 23rd. So there is plenty of time and it's all for free, literally that easy. I got a lot of champions I like, but right now, a personal favorite of mine is Grinner of the Undead Hordes. So there's a lot for you guys to get. And that is not all, there's even more if you use my link in the description or scan my QR code on screen right here to get big prizes. We're talking about an epic champion Talia, who's from the Sacred Order faction, and with this epic champion you will also get energy refills, skill tome, an XP booster, all for your starter pack. Just use the link in the description below or scan the QR code on screen. All of this is waiting for you in your inbox here, just a couple simple clicks. And that's it. But that's not the only title fight on the card. We also have the flyweight belt on the line, and it's a rematch between Alexandre Pantoja versus Brandon Royval. A lot of people forgot that these two fought each other, and it didn't happen that long ago. They fought each other in August 21st of 2021, where Pantoja submitted Brandon Royval pretty easily. The fight wasn't even that competitive. Royval really risked a lot in that fight, exposed his back to the wrong guy, and that was actually Royval's last loss. Ever since, he's gone on a 3-fight win streak, a very, very close split decision win against Rogerio Bontorin, and then he submitted Matt Schnell in the first round and knocked out Matthias Nicolau in the first round. The Matthias Nicolau win was especially eye-opening and finalized his title shot. So he gets something a lot of fighters don't get, a rematch with the guy that finished him, and it's in a title fight too. You also have Tony Ferguson versus Paddy Pimblett. We talked about this fight before. It should not be that one-sided for Paddy Pimblett. There are a lot of things that he does that does present openings for Tony Ferguson to capitalize on. He is also the veteran. He is more well-rounded than Paddy is. Even at his older age, it should be somewhat of a tough fight for Paddy Pimblett, as Tony has lost to better guys than Paddy is. Right? I think everyone that Tony lost to is better than Paddy, even Bobby Green. And he had some moments in these fights, so it's an interesting one. It is definitely a change of the guard, build a younger guy off the legend's name. And then we have Shavkat Rakhmonov versus Stephen Thompson. All credit to Stephen Thompson for taking this fight because it looked like nobody wanted to fight Shavkat. And Wonder Boy actually talked about it more, and he said the reason why he turned down Shavkat the first time he was offered him was because he didn't even know who the guy was. But the Jeff Neal performance from Shavkat really opened a lot of people's eyes on how good this guy is. And it looks like Usman has something on the table. That's why the Wonder Boy and Usman fight didn't get put together. The rumors are that Usman's fighting Bilal, and that makes a lot of sense. So I love this fight between Shavkat and Wonder Boy as well, even though it is going to be a very difficult one for Stephen Thompson to get past. And then finally we have Vicente Luque versus Ian Garry. This was made official yesterday, and both these guys are teammates, they're friends, and they both said they're going to put that aside when they go up against each other. No respect is going to be lost before, during, or after the fight. They got to do what they got to do. There's too many friends in the welterweight division, and I'm glad Ian Garry and Vicente Luque are going to be fighting each other despite that. Huge amount of respect for both guys to do that, because there's quite a few fighters that just refuse to fight each other. But for Luque and Garry, I don't know how close they actually are, but they talked about it, man. They're like, no respect's gonna be lost, we're still gonna be friends, and we're gonna put on a show. Credit to both guys, man. So let's look at Leon Edwards versus Colby Covington. So Leon Edwards has gone undefeated in his last 12 fights. He has not lost since 2015, and he avenged that loss against Kamaru Usman. Beat him twice, actually. So he's on a crazy streak right now. As for Colby Covington, he's coming off 1 win, and he is 2-2 in his last 4 fights. But before the Usman fights, he did go on a 7-fight win streak. He has the Woodley win in between the Usman losses, and a lot of people do believe the second Usman fight should have been a draw, showing how competitive he is even against someone like Usman, and he is a favorite going into this fight. Colby Covington is actually the favorite against the champion. And I think the reason for that is Colby's wrestling style is a lot bigger threat than Usman's wrestling was. Usman's wrestling has been declining for years, and it's been pretty evident when you watch them on Tough all the way to the Leon Edwards loss. His takedowns have gradually become worse because of how damaged his body is. There's so much wear and tear on that body. Colby doesn't have that. Colby shoots very fast. He can be quite explosive with his takedowns. His chain wrestling is absolutely elite. And that's going to be one of the bigger problems for Leon Edwards. Usman has a completely different wrestling style to Colby Covington. When Colby takes you down, he's already working for a different angle while you're trying to stand up. This is especially shown in the Jorge Masvidal fight, which was his last one, where he even got Jorge's back, something that a lot of Leon's opponents don't necessarily do against him. Combined with the pressure and striking output, it can overwhelm the sniper that is Leon Edwards. Leon does not have a lot of activity. He's kind of like a one-shot guy, 2-strike combinations. Leon's kind of a guy who just throws 1-strike moves, 1-2 moves, 1 high kick moves. And these sequences don't happen that frequently. He likes a lot of space to work with when it comes to his range striking, and if Colby is overwhelming him with punches, even as sloppy as he can be sometimes, I think it can throw Leon Edwards off, and then the takedowns could come out of nowhere if Leon does not pinpoint his counter shots precisely. There was even that takedown in the 3rd Usman fight where he threw a counter left hook, I think it was, and Usman ducked under it, grabbed his legs, and took him to the ground. Colby is a lot faster than Usman, so not only are the takedowns going to come more frequently, but they'll also come at a different level of speed where Leon's going to be a lot more careful of what he throws, because he's going to get backed up. He's going to get backed up if Colby is coming out there aggressive, because sometimes Colby will come out there a little bit more passive like he did in the 2nd Usman fight for the first round and a half, and then he amped it up afterward. Colby does a lot better when he's aggressive. When he's pushing you back, throwing a bunch of punches, overwhelming you with output, shooting takedowns under your counter shots, switches angles that take away your post and the ability to stand up on the cage. And he will threaten with rear naked chokes and stuff like that as well that Usman just does not do. Usman just doesn't do BJJ. He just doesn't do it. Now, where Colby can have a bit of an issue is if Leon Edwards can tie him up in the clinch. If you can get him to the tie plum, land some elbows and knees, Colby can be in some trouble here. Leon actually imposed this on Gunnar Nelson back in the day and dropped him with a very clean elbow. Leon has good power, but Leon is a lot more precise than anything else. He knows how to hit the button, man. So if there's anybody that can catch Colby Covington coming in recklessly, it is Leon Edwards. That's why I think this fight is rather hard to predict, but I do ultimately, as an early prediction, pick Colby Covington to win this fight by a decision. I think he's going to win more of the rounds. Colby's also very durable. He's very tough. He recovers fast even if he gets hurt. There can be some concern with the amount of times he's gotten dropped in his last 4 fights. Usman dropped him, I think, a total of 5 times? 4 or 5 times, something like that, and then Jorge dropped him too. So even though it's in his last 4 fights, this spans like 4 years. The first Usman fight was 4 years ago. So he does take a lot of time in between fights to recover, and I think that's where a lot of people are missing out on all this. right? That hook that Jorge hit him with could have knocked out anybody in the world. Colby did get dropped, but he bounced right back up, came back into the fight, and started winning again. I think a lot of that credit has to be because of the amount of time he takes in between fights. He's able to recover. And then in the co-main event, Alexandre Pantoja versus Brandon Royval 2. Alexandre Pantoja is coming off a 4-fight win streak. Very impressive streak, by the way, by beating Manel Kape by decision, submitting Brandon Royval, submitting Alex Perez, and then beating Brandon Moreno for the 3rd time. Very impressive win streak he's going off right now. And like we talked about before, Brandon Royval is on a 3-fight win streak against Bontorin, Mashnell, and Matheus Nicolau. It's just a very tough fight for Brandon Royval to win. The main reason as to why, if I simplify this, Brandon Royval is very wild. He's an absolute tornado out there. He throws a bunch of crazy stuff, very defenseless. He risks so much in his fights, just throws a bunch of crazy stuff. From flying knees, he even scrambles crazy on the ground as well. I think because of Alexandre Pantoja's chin, there's no way he gets knocked out, even if he gets caught by something clean. I mean, Deiveson Figueiredo and Brandon Moreno weren't even able to knock this guy out at all, and they hit him with some clean shots repeatedly. And Deiveson Figueiredo hits way harder than Brandon Royval does. Royval can just catch you with some like spinning kick to the head or flying knee or something like that, like he did against Matheus Nicolau, right? That could probably hurt Pantoja, but like, I trust that guy's chin so much. He's a brawler. He has good power and a very good chin. Not technical on the stand-up. Royval is a better striker overall, but I just don't see how the fight doesn't hit the ground. I think because of the craziness from Royval, the fight is eventually going to hit the ground. Whether a flying knee gets caught, a big kick gets caught, Pantoja takes him to the ground, something like that is inevitable. And on the ground, Pantoja's the best. He's the best. Royval's sneaky with his submissions, but there's nothing that he can do that Pantoja hasn't seen before. I can see a very similar repeat of the first fight. I see Pantoja again getting his back and choking him out, really establishing a huge legendary reign in this flyweight division. Tony Ferguson versus Paddy Pimblett. Sadly, Tony Ferguson is coming off a 6-fight losing streak. 4 of those by finish. He got TKO'd by Justin Gaethje, knocked out by Michael Chandler, submitted by Nate Diaz, and submitted by Bobby Green. The most surprising one was the Bobby Green submission. We all thought Bobby Green would probably knock him out, TKO him on the feet, but to submit him and choke him unconscious, that came out of left field. The Michael Chandler knockout was also pretty crazy, but we did all expect Chandler to knock him out. For Paddy Pimblett, he's on a 6-fight win streak. 2 of those are in Cage Warriors, so he beat Decky Dalton, David Martinez, Luigi Vendramini, Rodrigo Vargas, Jordan Levitt, and Jared Gordon. He lost that Jared Gordon fight. Not just lost, but he arguably lost every round of that fight, and they still give him a unanimous decision win. Crazy. And it is sad to compare Tony to someone like Jared Gordon. That's nothing against Gordon, but Tony was at one point looked at as such a great lightweight. Even an all-time great. He holds the record by himself for the longest win streak in lightweight history. 12 wins in a row is a very hard thing to do while consistently making weight. So here's how the fight is probably going to play out. Paddy's going to come out there respecting Tony a little bit in the beginning. Maybe not trying to get too reckless out there. Tony's going to throw some funky stuff. I can see Paddy catching him a couple times here and there. And then at some point, Paddy is going to get very angsty of throwing some big punches, blitzing in, and those moments are where Tony Ferguson can catch him. Tony's got a chin on him. He has heart. He has bigger power than anybody Paddy's fought in the UFC by a long shot. This guy also has a big reach advantage over Paddy. Paddy's reach is 73 inches, Tony's is like 76, 77. So when it comes to the stand-up, I can actually see Paddy Pimblett losing the fight. He can overwhelm Tony, who has aged a lot. He could overwhelm him with some big punches. But in the Bobby Green and Michael Chandler fights, Tony had a lot of good moments in the beginning. Some people want to say that Bobby Green's eye poke is what affected Tony Ferguson and caused a decline in that fight. And then for Michael Chandler, he just made a mistake. He backed up when he shouldn't have, and he got front kicked to the face. But he did win the first round. He did drop Michael Chandler. Tony is still somewhat dangerous, I would say, for guys on Paddy's level. I think people are too fast on the trigger to count out Tony Ferguson in this fight. Now, if the fight hits the ground, Paddy Pimblett's going to submit him. How does it hit the ground? I think the most likely way it does is if Paddy drops Tony Ferguson, or if Tony takes Paddy to the ground. If Tony shoots a takedown in this fight, I don't even know anymore. This is not the guy to shoot takedowns on. Paddy is a way better Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu artist than he is a striker. Tony's way of winning the fight is in the stand-up. Right now, I might go back on this, but I am going to go with Paddy Pimblett, but a very, very close one. I am not confident in it at all. I think he will drop Tony Ferguson and then submit him. Shavkat Rakhmonov versus Stephen Thompson. We talked about this fight before. Shavkat Rakhmonov is undefeated, 17-fight win streak all finishes. He has never gone to a decision. And in the UFC, he has beaten Alex Oliveira in his UFC debut, Michel Prazeres, Carlston Harris, Neil Magny, and Jeff Neal. He has literally no easy fights. Every guy he fought on the level that he was supposed to be a hard fight for him. UFC debut against Alex Oliveira is crazy. And then his second fight against Prazeres, who's a veteran, has fought so many good fighters. Carlston Harris is a very underrated fighter. Ever since losing to Shavkat, he's been looking amazing. And then he fought ranked fighters like Neil Magny and Jeff Neal and looked good in both those fights. Stephen Thompson, on the other hand, is coming off one win against Kevin Holland where he put on a masterclass, and before that got out-wrestled by Bilal Muhammad and Gilbert Burns. And then before that beat strikers Jeff Neal and Vicente Luque. If you're a striker, good luck with this guy, man. Stephen Thompson is probably going to have the striking advantage overall. He has not aged in his striking at all. He actually looks just as good as ever. It's his takedown defense and wrestling that has greatly declined. There was at one point in Stephen Thompson's career when he fought like Johnny Hendricks and Rory McDonald that his takedown defense was actually pretty good. And then something happened along the way as he got older. It just like disappeared. He became so easy to take down. Some of the techniques were different, right? The footwork from the newer guys like Bilal Muhammad and Gilbert Burns is a bit different than Johnny Hendricks and Rory McDonald. Johnny Hendricks wasn't a plotter. Rory kind of was, but the takedown entries were a little bit different back then. They were more dated. So I think that has something to do with it as well. And Shavkat's absolutely going to shoot takedowns. If he doesn't, he can get beat. There's some threats that he imposes in the stand-up against Wonderboy. He has a lot of power. He has a reach advantage. He throws really good kicks. He's super precise with everything he throws. He has a very good jab, excellent jab, which I think is going to be Wonderboy's biggest problem in the stand-up. But overall, I think Shavkat's defense will fail him against a lot of Wonderboy shots. And from there, I think Shavkat has to shoot takedowns. He's so big and strong with good wrestling skill, I just don't see how Wonderboy stops them. If he can't stop Bilal Muhammad's and Gilbert Burns, who are much smaller than Shavkat, if he can't stop their takedowns, there's no way he's stopping Shavkat's. I think once Shavkat gets a hold of Wonderboy, the strength difference is going to be very evident. And that's where I see Shavkat submitting Wonderboy. As long as it stays in the stand-up though, Wonderboy does have a chance. And then finally we go to Vicente Luque versus Ian Garry. The number 10 versus number 11 fighters. Vicente Luque is coming off one win against Rafa dos Anjos, where he kind of just overpowered him. He used his size against him and took him down constantly. It wasn't that fun of a fight to watch. RDA has to stay away from welterweights, man. This is how he loses to all of them. Even guys that aren't good wrestlers like Vicente was wrestling him. They're just way too big. And before that, Vicente Luque got beat by Jeff Neal in a horrendous knockout. Lost to Bilal Muhammad before that. Ian Garry is an undefeated rising contender, 13-0, and in the UFC, he has beaten Jordan Williams for his UFC debut, knocked him out in the first round, beat Darian Weeks, Gabriel Green, Song Kinan, Daniel Rodriguez, and Neil Magny. Obviously, I think the Daniel Rodriguez win is his best performance in the UFC. And against Neil Magny, he looked really good. I mean, he did what he was supposed to. Leg kicked him, jabbed him, didn't really go for too much finishing opportunities, but did fight smart out there. For a young guy like him, that was pretty good to see. That he is patient, he will look for openings like that, and he will not rush. But then again, Neil Magny's not a dangerous guy to do that against, so. In this fight with Vicente Luque, for some reason, man, I don't like it for Luque. These guys know each other, they've trained together, so they know some secrets about each other that we probably don't, and the fight might play out very different than normally. Vicente Luque is definitely the slower fighter out there. Ian Garry's gonna have the speed advantage, he has the height and reach advantage. Vicente might be more powerful punch for punch, but Ian Garry also has knockout potential. He's a lot more precise, I think. And Luque's defense is just not there. That was very much exposed in the Wonderboy fight, and against Jeff Neal too. The guy just doesn't move his head. He puts up a guard, his hands are up, textbook style, but you can plant straight shots on his face all day, and he just does not move his head. And I think because of Ian Garry's range, he can keep him at that range the entire time while popping him in the face. And I think eventually he is going to finish Vicente Luque. I think eventually he's going to catch him with some straight punch as Luque tries to get desperate from all the punches he's taking and gets dropped by a dynamic right hand from Ian Garry. I don't trust Vicente Luque's chin after that Jeff Neal fight. That knockout was so bad, the guy literally had a brain leak. RDA is a smaller guy who doesn't really have that much power at welterweight, so it wasn't as dangerous of a fight for Vicente, and he just wrestled him the whole time. Ian Garry's a different story, man. This guy's a completely different story. He's big, he's long, he's powerful and precise, and he's young and hungry. I think Vicente's best days are behind him, and that's crazy to say when he's only 31 years old. He just takes too much damage, and I think this is going to be another display of Ian Garry's striking. I do anticipate Vicente Luque try to take him to the ground. It's a very tough fight for Vicente Luque, so I'm expecting Ian Garry to finish him by a 3rd round TKO. So there you have it, man. UFC 296, super stacked. A lot of people actually think this is the most stacked card of the year. I mean, the main card is crazy. Leave in the comments below, what is your guys' favorite fight on the card? And how do you rate it overall? Make sure to give the video a like, subscribe, hit the bell for notifications, and I'll see you guys in the next video.